Welcome to Capitol Square. I'm Jim Heath. Ohio under the microscope, as many believe yet another presidential election could be determined right here. Making sure those who are registered to vote can and those who aren't don't is always a big challenge of election officials. The top elections official in the state of Ohio is Secretary of State Jon Husted. He joins us now once again on Capitol Square. Mr. Secretary, it's always good to see you.
Great to be with you, Jim.
Let's talk about this. All eyes of the nation watching. Are the counties ready? Are all the counties in Ohio ready for such a big election?
Well, they're actively preparing, and they will be by the time voting starts, which is not that far from now because we have to send out military and overseas ballots 45 days in advance of the election. Voting starts in person 35 days out. And for the first time ever in our state's history, every single registered voter will receive an absentee ballot request, not an absentee ballot, but an absentee ballot request. They can fill it out, sign their name, address, date of birth, give us their driver's license number, their last four digits of their social security number, send it in, vote by mail, and you don't even really have to leave your home to vote anymore.
And you cleaned that up, right? I mean, that used to be sort of a jigsaw. Some counties would do that, others wouldn't, and there was a universal question from both parties and a lot of candidates of how is that fair?
Yeah, because we get the question, why are we doing this? Well, the reason is because some counties were already doing it and others weren't. And what concerned me is that voters weren't being given equal access in the state. You had some counties where you could vote by mail and get this unsolicited absentee ballot request. Say in Franklin County, people liked it. Over 50% of the votes came via mail in the last election in Franklin County. But voters in Delaware and Licking County weren't given the same access. We wanted to create uniformity. We either do it in no counties or all of them. We decided to do in all of them for the presidential election. It will not only make it easier to vote for a lot of folks, but also has the potential to drive down some costs because you can consolidate the number of precincts that you actually have to have. That means fewer poll workers you have to pay. And then also should shorten lines on election day to make the whole process more convenient for everybody.
Are all the machines now uniform? Are they all electronic across the state? I think back to the 2004 debacle, some of those counties with the hanging chads and paper ballots.
There's a uniform standard. They have to meet the Help America Vote Act standards that were established by federal law and overseen in the state by the Board of Voting Machine Examiners. All of the machines meet those standards, although they're not the same machines in every county.
Cuyahoga County deadlocked. So much talk through the years about weekend voting, the weekend before the election voting, the pros and the cons. Cuyahoga County now, their elections board has split on that issue, leaving it up to you to break the tie. Which way will you go? Do you think Saturday and Sunday voting is a good idea, the weekend before the election?
But that's not what their tie vote is about. Their tie vote is about extended office hours because the law has changed on the matter of voting the weekend before. The legislature changed the law. You cannot vote the weekend before because that's the standard in the law. What they're also quarreling about in Cuyahoga County are extended voting hours in some of the previous weekends and during the weekdays. And what I have said to the boards of elections all around the state is that they can go ahead and, as much as I want uniform standards, if the local Democrats and Republicans can work out an alternative, I will let their local alternative stand. But in the absence of them being able to work out their problems with one another, I am not breaking ties for extended hours. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, you can start voting 35 days out. You don't even have to leave your home to vote. There are 790 hours in which you can cast your ballot already under the normal standards. It's pretty easy. And I am not going to be breaking ties to create different standards county to county, which is essentially what they're asking me to do. And also, budgets are tight. I'm not going to force them to extend hours at a time when local governments are struggling to make ends meet, and every single board of elections is stretched to its limits. And so we're going to try to create a uniform standard, make things fair for everybody in the state.
I forgot that law had changed, but philosophically, I mean, you were not a proponent of that weekend before election voting.
You know, I think that you can have voting the weekend before if you had it on, say, half a day Saturday, full day Saturday. Most counties were not doing that anyway. That's the thing, again, non-uniform standards. But you need to give the boards a couple of days to get ready because everybody that votes early, you need to check who voted early against the books that you have. mark all those voters off before you send the books back out to the polls on election day, so that the poll workers know who's voted early and who hasn't. And if you don't give the local boards a couple of days, we can have mistakes. So we need to give a couple of days before that Tuesday election, give them a break so that they can get their stuff organized.
If I recall my history correct, that Tuesday was chosen over 100 years ago, back in the 1800s, to allow farmers to have some time to get there. I mean, do you see it coming in the near future where we will have electronic voting only and Tuesday will not even be necessary?
Well, look, it's pretty much an a la carte menu right now. You can vote early at the Board of Elections, you can vote on election day at your local school or fire station, or you can vote by mail. The idea of electronic voting, understand, for military voters, if you're in Afghanistan, we transmit your ballot to you electronically already. Now you have to print it off, fill it out, and then send it back. And one of the things we've done for military voters, by the way, we allow them to track that to make sure that it gets back to their local Board of Elections and that they know that their vote is counted. But electronic voting is a long way off, not just from a technology point, but there's two reasons. One, it costs a lot. It would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to put a system like that in place at a time. No one seems to be willing even to spend money to give health care insurance to boards of elections officials. I mean, you know, that's how tight budgets are stretched on these issues right now. And probably the most important, people just don't trust it. They don't believe that electronic voting is secure at this point. And so because confidence in the system is more important than convenience.
Right.
And so until that those issues are worked out, we're a long ways from electronic voting.
Speaking of confidence, dead people on the rolls, there were thousands of them. Are they now gone?
Yeah, well,
officially?
we've cleaned out cleaned up the voter rolls. Over 19,000 deceased voters were removed from the voter roll since I became Secretary of State, working with the diligence of our local officials. Over 325,000 duplicates have been removed from the voter rolls. This is important not only to protect against voter fraud, but also saves a lot of money, because every Board of Elections has to mail out these if you're on the rolls, they mail you. That you receive something in the mail from the local Board of Elections, which costs money, and when you have names on the rolls that aren't supposed to be there, creates the potential for fraud. We're cleaning that up. We've actually joined a system called Steve, where we work with 20 other states to transmit death records and things like that between our states.
That's a good idea.
That allows that to make sure that even if you die in another state, we're going to clean that name off the rolls.
Two kind of dicey political issues here. A lot of Republicans have advocated for a photo ID before you vote. You didn't like that idea very much.
Well, first of all, this is a complicated issue. Those other states you hear about photo IDs, actually in all of those states you can vote without using a photo ID. It gets lost in the noise of the national debate. I don't need to get into all the details as how you can do it, but there are really no strict photo ID laws in most of these states. The question is, how strict do you want your identification process to be? I would like to make it simple. Photo ID is great, but in cases, say that you're a retired, disabled Korean War veteran who doesn't have a photo ID, we should give that person the ability to present their name, address, signature, and their Social Security number that we can then check against the statewide database and make sure that they are indeed legally registered to vote, so that we don't deny someone like that the opportunity.
You have been a leading Republican through the years, trying to find a fair way on redistricting. You championed that when you were a state senator. Voters first, we're going to have a conversation about that in a few minutes. You are the Secretary of State. What are your thoughts on this voter referendum? Should we go to a more bipartisan approach in how we do our redistricting in Ohio?
Of course we should go to a more bipartisan approach, but the one pending before us is not the solution for a number of reasons. The bottom line is, if you're ever going to work this issue out, you can't have each party in-running the other one to try to get their way to do this. You got to have both parties sit down together, unilaterally disarm, agree on something that's fair to each of them, and also fair to the voters of the state.
It just doesn't happen, though. I remember Armand Buttigieg basically saying he was going to roll the dice instead of letting your bill come up in the House.
Yeah, and
Democrats now unhappy with that decision.
Well, and that's what's wrong with this system. Because let's just say that this makes the ballot and this wins. That's not the end of it, because Republicans will then be back at the ballot 2 years later, doing their own plan that will modify what just happened. And we just can't, that's got to stop. it's time right now, no time better than the present. What I'd say right now, Republicans and Democrats should sit down, work out the details of an alternative plan, have the legislature come back this summer, put it on the ballot, and move on rather than going through this nonsense that we're going through right now.
And I'd be happy for this table to host that. So anytime they want to do that, they can come right here.
That'd be great.
Secretary, good to see you, as
you.
always. All right.